Is Jimmy Butler going to the Nets? Another day, another rumor about an NBA star potentially leaving. If you watch my videos, you know I just was talking about, maybe it was yesterday or a couple of days ago, that there may not be any stars available at that time, supposedly. I said, but they always become available at some point in the season. It just happens, a star becomes available. And now that Jimmy Butler is 100% available, this is just a rumor, a report, that someone said. However, this just proves my point. At any given moment, a star could become available. So the latest rumor is that Jimmy Butler could potentially leave Miami and head to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, how much credibility there is in this, I am not sure. So I cannot speak to how realistic this is going to be. But I saw it and I was like, I kind of feel like talking about it. So basically what it was saying is that if Jimmy does not get the max extension that he wants, he could leave to the Nets, which apparently he potentially likes the Nets. I don't know. Like I said, it's more like a rumor. Reporters, they have their sources, so it's not that we don't believe it, but also take everything with a grain of salt until, something happens. So he may like the Nets, as the report said. And he may be thinking about leaving Miami if he does not get that extension. I'm not saying what came out in that report is false. I'm just saying I don't know if it's true either. That's the point. But if that report does come true and there was truth in it, let's talk about what it would be like if Jimmy Butler left the Miami Heat and went to the Nets. The move, personally to me, would be a little bit odd unless he knows that he's going to team up with somebody else in Brooklyn. He's planning ahead and he knows that some other star is going to come with him. Hey, maybe Damian Lillard. They wanted to play together in Miami. I know Dame's on the Bucks and all that, but maybe he's going to be available to go play for the Nets at that time too. I don't know. I'm just saying. And I don't know if Jimmy actually wants to leave Miami. To me, the person, or I guess the organization, that this makes the least sense for is the Brooklyn Nets. And let me just say this. We know Jimmy Butler always shows up in the playoffs. Playoff Jimmy. He got that name for a reason, that nickname for a reason. He gets you wins, he shows up, he makes the right plays, and he's obviously a very good player. But it's almost like the Brooklyn Nets don't learn their lesson. But again, remember, this didn't happen yet, so I'm not saying they're going to do this. If this does happen, it feels like the Brooklyn Nets just don't learn their lesson. Because they went through it with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. And they had, you know the whole deal. So then for years, they were not very good. And they had to, slowly build up to being a good team again. And then they had, the Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, D'Angelo Russell days, which I loved watching that team. And they made the playoffs, and Kenny Atkinson was a very good coach there. And so that era happens. And then because they start, to be a decently good team, that's when the KD and Kyrie situation happened. KD became a free agent. We obviously know he left Golden State. He went to Brooklyn, brought Kyrie with him. And so the Nets did it again. And then they traded for James Harden, losing a bunch of picks by doing that, to pair the three. And we know that didn't work out in any way, shape, or form. It didn't last very long, and it ended up, not resulting in a championship and not too much playoff success. So then post KD and Kyrie, it seems like they're on the track to start rebuilding again, because as they saw, they didn't have many picks, and it didn't work out building, their super team again for the second time. Obviously a little bit different than Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, but the point is, doing that and not rebuilding and developing your young talent, now they're on that path again to develop young talent. And I really like Cam Thomas. He gets better and better every game, literally. I like Nick Claxton. He just got that extension. They have a bunch of young players now. So if they went this route again, it makes zero sense to me. Because unless they literally are going to have a team prepared to win a championship, why are you bringing in Jimmy Butler and paying him the max money? Because obviously they will be paying him that kind of money to go to Brooklyn. Again, that's nothing against Jimmy. It has literally nothing to do with Jimmy. It has to do with the Brooklyn Nets. Because to me, they are in a situation now where they need to just rebuild, develop the young talent, see it through, and make decisions from there. Like, don't try to shortcut it, if that makes sense. Like, yes, we understand when you have a chance to trade for a star and your team kind of hits a plateau and you need to have someone to push you over the edge, that makes sense. We get that. But, like, they're not at that point right now. So bringing in Jimmy Butler literally makes no sense unless you're just bringing him in to develop the young guys and show them work ethic and stuff like that. And if Jimmy's okay with that, then that's a bit of a different story. And they can absolutely make the playoffs with Jimmy because at that point, well, obviously Nick Claxton's still there and he'll be better and Cam Thomas should be better and they may, bring in a couple other players. But like, if they're thinking that they're just going to be a championship contender, they just bring in Jimmy Butler with basically the same roster, I'm not really understanding. What I'm saying basically is if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm not just trading away all my picks again to try to build this super team again, whoever it may, be composed of, because I don't know if it's going to work out. Because I don't know if you remember, but they got their picks back. The Brooklyn Nets have their picks back. They did a deal with Houston over the summer to get their own picks back. And now Houston has Phoenix's picks, which is a whole other thing. That's why the Houston story is so interesting, because they have Phoenix's picks. And so they can make a whole deal with Phoenix, because Phoenix is obviously going to want their picks back if this super team doesn't work out. So that's a whole nother thing. But the Brooklyn Nets have their own picks back. So if they're not very good, and this draft class is supposed to be loaded, they're looking pretty good. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if I was the Nets, I wouldn't jump at being in win now mode. I just wouldn't. Like, I would just try it out, develop first. I understand patience is thin in the NBA. Your team wants to win. Teams don't want to be at the bottom of the conference every year. They just don't. Not a lot of people have patience. But I feel like at this point, because this is would be the third time in the last decade, maybe even less than a decade, no, in the last decade, that they've done this, it hasn't worked. Let's just try a different way. And every situation is different, and I realize I spent the whole video talking about the Brooklyn Nets perspective because I just feel like that's the most interesting / doesn't make sense one. Because I feel like for Miami, it's obvious, if they lose Jimmy, that's not great, but at the same time, I feel like they are getting to the point where they may have to go in a different direction. So I don't see it as such a big deal for Miami. And then for Jimmy, it's obviously whatever he wants to do. So there's nothing really for me to say on that. And again, like I said, every situation is different. And I'm not saying that teams shouldn't go out and trade for a star to make their team better. If they have the opportunity, that is a whole different ball game. I'm just saying at this point, to me, it makes zero sense for the Brooklyn Nets to put all their eggs in a basket when they're not at that point. Not with the current roster. They're just not there yet. So to me, I would be so confused if they did this.